Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. More bolt action for you here as we continue on with our series covering the minor nations. So we had a bit of a pause there because they did re-release and provided an updated set of documents for all the nations. So we're kind of continuing on to finish them up, and then at some point we'll go back to the ones we've already covered and do sort of an update video on these. But today we're taking a look at the Netherlands. So they've actually got a couple army special rules here, which is pretty interesting. So forward artillery doctrine. So the forward artillery observer unit may call an artillery barrage twice instead of once per game, so that's already pretty potent there. Resolve the first one is normal, then after the first has been resolved, the observer may call a second when issued a fire order, so good stuff there, getting extra mileage out of that unit. Then we have highly motivated reserves. Every inexperienced unit that has one or more pin markers can make a test to lose a pin marker if there are any enemy within 12 immediately before an order is given to it. For example, the unit of infantry has 2 pin markers and there's an enemy unit within 12. When the infantry are allocated an order, they can test to lose 1 pin marker immediately before the order test is given. So, and then on a 4, 5, 6, it's passed, and 1, 2, 3, it's failed, and the unit retains the pin markers it has. Once that's done, then you continue for the actual normal test to see if you get to activate the unit. Once it's done, see if the unit obeys its order in the usual way, even if they've lost their last pin marker, in which case the order test is taken without the negative modifiers for the pin markers. So pretty potent ability there, and essentially a little bit of a free action before you get to activate that unit, and really just keeping your troops ideally more active and more in the fight throughout the game. So then let's take a look at their units here. We got our typical HQ offerings. Platoon commander, first or second lieutenant there with the options, and then a company commander as well. And again, 1 officer and up to 2 men with pistol, SMGs, or rifle as normal. And again, the experience levels for the officers, or the accompanying men for the officer there. The forward observer, which again is going to be extra valuable in this list because we can call 2 bombardments. And again, can have some bodyguards with him there. And has the infiltrator rule, only regular for this guy, so 75 points, but again, well worth it considering the extra barrage. The medic, typical stuff there as well. Now, it doesn't mention anything about the weapons for the men accompanying the medic, but you still get your medic and his abilities there for the 23 points. Now, getting into what they actually have for units, so the typical infantry, here, so 35 points inexperienced up through regular, there are no vets, getting you the basic 5 men here, and standard with rifles. You can add up to 6 additional men with rifles, and then 1 can exchange the LMG with another guy being a loader, so you get a little bit of extra firepower there. You can give them all engineers as well, so pretty cool option there to slightly adjust your standard infantry squad. If we're just looking for some cheap engineers, right, we could go inexperienced, keep the minimum unit, just have like a little 5-man engineer unit without having to spend really much in the way of points. So 40 points for that would be pretty sweet. But pretty solid infantry unit, if not necessarily overflowing with options. We do also get Indonesian infantry here as a section. Starting off, they're just purely inexperienced. Rifles, you can add up to 6 unarmed men for 5 points apiece, dirt cheap. You can give the unarmed men pistols for 1 extra point. 1 man can get an LMG, and again the other a loader. And you can give the whole unit shirkers for -2 per man. So really interesting way to get basically just a ton of bodies on the board. Obviously you're going to run the risks of inexperience and potentially shirkers there, but the fact that you can get some pretty sizable squads and maybe just kind of like for backfield objectives or something like that is pretty neat. Now, if we do get pistols, we got to be pretty close to use them. Not necessarily the most effective option, but on the other hand, if they're just going to go up there to essentially sacrifice themselves, also a viable strategy there, but pretty dirt cheap for those guys. So, then moving on, they get a motorcycle section here. So, typical of sort of early war forces here, 75 points. It's 1 NCO and 4 men on motorcycles with sidecars. And they have rifles. You can get up to 6 additional men on motorcycles/sidecars at 15 each. And 1 man can have the LMG, with another being a loader. So it's a neat little mobile squad here. Again, nothing too crazy. The rifles are what they are. But kind of having like a little mobile LMG team is pretty cool too. But we can get them to areas where we need to on the battlefield pretty quick without having to spend too many points. We do get access to an anti-tank rifle team, so again, a lot of typical early war type of things here. These guys actually would be veterans potentially, but dirt cheap if we want to go inexperienced or even regular. We get a sniper team, pretty standard stuff there, regular and vet, with the normal points there. And an MG team here, 1 medium machine gun, 3 men, your typical loadout there. And again, these guys can also be veterans, so we're seeing where like the veteran options really are, which is with the specialists here. But definitely worth it to get some suppressing fire here and causing some casualties. And then the mortars, just a medium mortar, no light mortars, no heavies here. You can add the spotter, usual options, and again, inexperienced all the way through veterans. So a good round out of the specialist troops here. Interestingly, no flamer teams, but you got plenty of options here, and especially which typically would be more of an early war type of force. But AT rifle can do a little bit of work. Snipers, of course, always useful. MG teams for laying down some heavy fire, and then the mortars for some indirect support as well. So good stuff there. Getting into artillery, which is where they're going to make up for some of their deficiencies with the overall just unit selection in the list. But we got howitzers. It's a light howitzer, and again, inexperienced through a vet, starting with a 3-man group. If we go to a medium and we add an extra man for another 40 points, the costs are ticking up, but again, you're getting a lot more value with a much bigger gun. And they do get the heavy howitzer option too, with another 2 extra men for 90 points. Now, got some downsides. You can have the severely outdated special rule, which gives you a 10-point discount. You can add the gun shield for a 5-point cost, and then the mediums and heavies do get spotter access as well for another 10 points. So the gun shield is the typical gun shield rule, nothing fancy there, but severely outdated, we haven't seen that yet. So if the options taken here, antiquated Dutch artillery is not precise enough to fire accurate artillery bombardments, and thus always needs a 6 to hit when the unit is firing indirect fire, even if firing on the same unit in subsequent turns. So interesting option here for the discount. Obviously needing a 6 to get anything is kind of rough, right? But again, it's only for indirect. So if we have, depending on the board, the ability to start getting some quality direct shots at enemy units, that's something, but not necessarily something that we want to necessarily deal with even with the 10-point discount. The AT guns, so we have basically a light AT option as a team here, inexperienced up through vet as well, no other upgrades, but again, can do a little bit of work against light vehicles, which is typically what we'd encounter. Again, if we're truly running it as like a light, or not light, but an early war force and kind of facing similar opposition. Anti-aircraft guns, we do have a light autocannon on a rotating platform, which is basically here 20 mil Oerlikons. 3 men, and again, inexperienced through vet. So we really see like all the veterancy is with all, again, the specialist type of troops, specialized units, not so much with the regular infantry, which is interesting. We could also pay a premium here if we want to upgrade to a heavy autocannon, add 1 more crew for another 15 points, which might well be worth it. It gets us a Bofors 40 mil, which can do some solid work, especially if we want to turn that around on not aircraft, but infantry and other like light vehicles. Does have the flak special rule, as we would expect. Moving on, believe it or not, they do have access to tanks. So not much, but they do have access. So they have the Carden Lloyd Tankette. Basically, it's just you're buying an armored car, effectively is what it counts as. Inexperienced and regular, and it's just providing you with a mobile forward-facing MMG. But that's not bad, especially for the points cost, right? We can get around, have a little bit of protection against infantry, and start spraying them down with MG fire. And then an actual light tank here. Well, actually, still armored car. A little bit more expensive, though. And here it's just called light tank. So we're not really getting a specific make and model. But inexperienced up through vet, interestingly enough on this, topping out at 90. Here we do get a turret-mounted HMG and a coax MG, so basically a Vickers light tank, I guess. There we go. So a little bit more firepower, again, still in the MG range. The heavy does let us punch some light vehicles, but again, we're hosing down infantry by and large, armored car for armor. We could replace the coax MG, or medium machine gun, for another HMG for 15 points, which is an interesting option there. Again, lets us do some solid work against things like trucks and other light vehicles, especially if we can get some side shots. Free if we want to make it amphibious, so I mean it's free, so it's no drawback really. Now another option we would have here is replace all weapons with 2 forward-facing hull-mounted medium machine guns and 1 turret-mounted medium machine gun for +5 points. And that's the Marmon Harrington CTLS. Haven't seen a picture of it before, I don't think, but be an interesting option though. But that gets us again more firepower for a little bit more points, although we're losing the benefits of the heavy machine guns from that, but more overall firepower. So that's really what we get for tanks. As you can tell, right, our anti-tank is going to be found elsewhere, certainly not with our vehicles so far. Okay, moving on, we got armored cars and recce vehicles. So again, we got another Marmon Harrington here. If we go with that option, so 64 points all the way to 96 for options there for veterancy. 2 turret-mounted medium machine guns, armored car. Here we can have a couple of upgrade paths. Replace all weapons with 1 turret-mounted medium machine gun and 1 hull-mounted forward-facing medium machine gun for free. That's the Alvis Strausler. Again, haven't seen all these vehicles before, but worth looking up and I guess seeing if there's models out there. And then replace all weapons with 1 turret-mounted light AT gun. So there we go. We finally get some AT action with coax MMG. 1 forward-facing hull-mounted medium machine gun and a rear medium machine gun. So must be an interesting-looking vehicle, and that's the Landswerk. It does have recce, so whichever option we go with. So that's an interesting option there. So we get, again, a little bit more AT availability. So far, nothing that's really going to punch, but again, if we're keeping with the early war theme, we hopefully won't encounter too many things that can resist that. And again, we'd probably still want to work around to the side and rear shots to get the benefits of that. But cool stuff here, not overly expensive. The overall wagon trucks. So again, inexperienced through vet. It's an armored car still. Forward-facing MMG for the patrol truck. We could replace that with a pintle-mounted medium with 360 for 10 points. Not a bad deal. We could upgrade that pintle-mounted MMG to an HMG for another 10 points, which, again, we're spending another 20 points. It's getting a little bit more expensive, but added flexibility is pretty cool. We could also add up to 2 additional pintle-mounted medium machine guns covering the right and rear arcs and covering the left and rear arcs for 15 points each. So kind of adding that more all-round firepower, we should say. And then we could also replace all weapons with 1 rear-facing light howitzer and 1 front-facing MMG and lose the recce rule for 35 points, the Navy gun truck. Again, it would be interesting to see like pictures and models of all this, just to see what really that would look like. But again, gives us a little bit of flexibility. We have a mobile howitzer essentially, so that does present some interesting options. But again, nothing overwhelming here with the Netherlands force. Right, we're not getting any like absolutely devastating units. Not that they had those, but we do have limited options. But we can make do with that. Does have open topped and then recce except for the gun truck. We do get some transports, so armored carriers here. That's the overall wagon APC. This can transport up to 12 men if we go with that option. So that'll help get our squads around. Lighter medium AT guns, which we don't have any mediums to tow, but we do have the lights. Light howitzer, light AT guns, so we have some options of getting that stuff moved around. We could arm these things for a little bit more points. So front-facing MMG for 10 points, not bad. 1 front-facing HMG and reduce the transport capacity to 8 for plus 21 points. Oh, the M3 White Scout car. Okay, so that's pretty cool. The M3 may then add up to 2 additional machine guns, right? The normal options for that, so it's kind of got all over coverage there. So that's actually pretty cool, so that they get that. So there's one sort of modern vehicle here. But again, toting a lot of machine guns, we're not getting into like any serious anti-tank option with that, but it is what it is. But that's still a very cool vehicle that they actually have access to, then, which would be, I think, well worth the points investment. We don't necessarily need the the larger squad capacity there. So 8 is plenty, especially if we pack it with some quality infantry that we would take, and helps us get around the board. Last up here, we got Jeeps and light utility vehicles. So dirt cheap stuff there, soft skin, 3 men, can tow a light AT gun at most. We could add a pintle-mounted MMG with 360 for 20 points. We lose the transport capacity, and counts as an armored car choice. You may then upgrade the medium to a heavy, so basically probably getting a 50 cal on there for another 10. Points are ticking up there, but again, that gets us sort of the little Jeep option there where we're running around with a 50 cal trying to hunt down vulnerable units like teams and stuff like that. Light utility trucks, though, may add up to 2 additional pintle-mounted medium machine guns, one covering the right and rear and one the left and rear for 15 points, or instead may add a forward-facing or rear-facing hull AT gun for 50 points. So kind of getting a pseudo anti-tank platform. Obviously, got to be super careful with that. 6-up armor is, well, it's virtually non-existent. It's paper, right? And then 50 points is a pretty hefty chunk of points, but it is one of our few options where we're going to get another AT gun into the list, and then actually getting mobility out of it too, right? We're not like a more or less fixed in place team, but is the points cost really worth it for that? So I mean, up to you to decide. But again, we can present the enemy with, I think, just lots of little dangers, and ideally, if they focus on one, hopefully they're exposing their side or something to another light AT gun. So if we need to drop some vehicles, we have options there. Finally, the armed truck. So again, pretty cheap overall there. Already comes with an Pintle MMG with 360, soft skin, does have a very good transport capacity of 12 there. And again, can tow pretty much everything that our list has access to, right? Again, I don't know why they bother with the medium AT gun if we don't have any of the list, but I guess just for consistency's sake. Can add up to 2 additional pintle-mounted machine guns, again, right rear and left rear for 15 points each. So if there's one thing that the Netherlands list does have access to here, it is a ton of options for pintle machine guns and just other like machine guns on basically everything that has wheels or tracks. So in that sense, we're going to be throwing a bucket of dice, and that helps make up for the lack of infantry options, right? We have our standard infantry unit, which is fine, but nothing overwhelming. And then we do have our Indonesian options, which again are kind of underwhelming, but also dirt cheap. So we have limited options on the infantry front, but again, that's going to be the firepower part is going to be made up for by all the different teams and vehicles that will have just a ton of machine gun options. So that will be providing the sort of the weight of fire that the infantry won't necessarily deliver. But again, if we have a deficiency here, is that we don't really have any decent vehicles. Everything's kind of flimsy, but again, as a trade-off, obviously cheaper than counterparts, and at best it seems like we're getting light AT guns. Now interestingly, they can be engineers here, but again, we don't really see any other like flamer options or anything in the list. But a fun list to try out, if nothing else. Again, I think the artillery is going to probably be our king here as far as dropping the big boom. So probably want to invest in either at least the medium, if not the heavy howitzer, and just getting as much out of that as we can. And then I think with the special rule, the forward observer is kind of a default choice. We got to get that in there, and ideally call in 2 barrages, and hopefully that does a lot of work for us. And again, I think more so than just trying to wipe out the enemy, we got to play the mission and play to win for that. And then again, getting also the advantage in the infantry front of the highly motivated reserves. Let us know, guys, if you built a Netherlands force for 3rd edition here, how you've played that, what have you focused on, and where you've had successes or failures. Hit us up in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to support the channel too, check out the pinned comment, and anything you support there via a purchase at Warlord does help out the channel too, and we'll be back for more. Thanks for watching.